Welcome to the second part on the lesson of chemical reactions and enzymes. We still have the same objectives. Let us learn about the concept of the enzyme substrate complex and illustrate how enzymes catalyze chemical reactions. The left side of the slide shows the detailed process with the use of carbonic anhydrase as an enzyme. First, the enzyme shown is carbonic anhydrase. The substrates are carbon dioxide and water. These substrates bind to the enzyme's active site, forming the enzyme substrate complex. So this one is the enzyme substrate complex. Once the substrates are bound, they form a temporary stable structure known as the enzyme substrate complex. This step is essential for the enzyme to catalyze the reaction efficiently. The enzyme catalyzes the reaction converting carbon dioxide and water to carbonic acid. This product is shown there in red and labeled as product. The enzyme releases the product, carbonic acid, and the enzyme remains unchanged, ready to catalyze another reaction cycle. On the right side of the slide shows the lock and key model. This simplified diagram illustrates the lock and key model of enzyme action. The enzyme in green has a specific shape that perfectly matches the shape of the substrate purple, similar to how a key fits into a lock. After binding, the enzyme forms the enzyme substrate complex, then converts the substrate into products, blue pieces, which are released. The enzyme remains unchanged after the reaction. Here are the key concepts. First, active site. It is the specific region where the substrate binds. The enzyme substrate complex, second, is a temporary structure formed during the reaction. Third, product formation. Substrates are transformed into products. And fourth, enzyme specificity, which is the enzyme only binds to specific substrates due to the unique shape of its active site. In this example, carbonic anhydrase speeds up the conversion of carbon dioxide and water into carbonic acid, demonstrating how enzymes facilitate essential biological reactions. On the succeeding slides, we are going to tackle the factors affecting the enzyme activity, which you will be doing as well in the lab. Enzymes function optimally with a specific pH range, and deviations from this pH range can alter their tertiary structure, leading to denaturation or loss of function. The graph demonstrates the rate of enzyme activity across different pH levels, highlighting that salivary amylase, which breaks down starch into maltose in the mouth, operates best at pH of 6.7 to 7, as you can see here in the graph. In contrast, the enzyme in the small intestine function optimally in a more alkaline environment with a pH closer to 8 to 9. This emphasizes that pH is a critical factor influencing enzyme efficiency. Enzymes function also within a specific temperature range, with most human enzymes operating optimally at approximately 36 degrees Celsius or 96.8 Fahrenheit. Beyond this optimal temperature, enzyme activity declines. sharply as high temperature causes enzymes to become denatured, resulting in the loss of their functional shape. The graph demonstrates that enzyme activity increases with the temperature up to the peak at around 36 to 40 degrees Celsius, after which it rapidly decreases due to denaturation. This highlights the impact of elevated body temperatures, such as during a fever, on enzyme function. This slide demonstrates the concept of protein denaturation using examples of an egg and whipped egg whites. The left side, which is an egg example, functional protein, which is the labeled A, shows a raw egg with intact proteins in the egg white and yolk. In this state, the proteins maintain their natural structure and function. Letter B shows a denatured or destroyed protein. It displays a cooked egg where heat has caused the proteins to denature. This process disrupts the egg's protein structure, resulting in a solidified, opaque appearance as the proteins lose their original shape and function. The right side, which are whipped egg whites, the first one is showing a foamy egg white. Initial whisking introduces air into the egg whites, forming bubbles, but the proteins are still partially structured. With the soft peaks, continued whisking causes the proteins to unfold and partially denature, stabilizing air bubbles and forming soft peaks. Stiff peaks are caused by more whisking leads to further denaturation, creating a firmer, more structured foam that holds its shape. The overwhipped, which is excessive whisking, fully denatures the proteins, causing the foam to collapse and form a grainy, clumpy texture due to protein aggregation. Both examples illustrate how physical whisking or thermal or use of heat stress can denature proteins. Denaturation alters the protein's natural structure, impacting its function and appearance. In cooking, this process is essential for transforming food textures and properties. Now let us proceed with the presence of inhibitors. Inhibitors are molecules that bind to enzymes and prevent the natural substrate from binding, thereby reducing enzyme activity. First, competitive inhibitor specifically bind to the enzyme's active site, the same location where the substrate normally binds. By occupying this site, they block the natural substrate from attaching, slowing down, or stopping the enzyme catalyzed reaction. The diagram shows on the left the enzyme has an open binding site ready for the substrate. The inhibitor nearby, or labeled 1, competes with the substrate for this binding site. On the right side, the inhibitor binds to the active site, turning the enzyme inactive because the natural substrate S1 and S2 cannot bind. Here's the overall impact. Competitive inhibition reduces the reaction rate by preventing the natural substrate from interacting with the enzyme. And second, this inhibition can often be overcome by increasing the concentration of the natural substrate, allowing it to outcompete the inhibitor. This is how ethylene glycol, which is found in antifreeze, becomes toxic in the body due to enzyme activity. When ingested, alcohol dehydrogenase converts ethylene glycol into oxalic acid, a highly toxic compound that can be fatal. The key treatment for ethylene glycol poisoning involves administering ethanol or fomepizole, which act as competitive inhibitors. These substances bind to alcohol dehydrogenase, preventing it from metabolizing ethylene glycol into toxic oxalic acid. This allows the body to safely eliminate ethylene glycol without producing harmful byproducts. Now let's proceed with non-competitive inhibitors. These inhibitors bind to an enzyme at a site other than the active site. This type of inhibitor does not block the substrate from binding to the enzyme, but instead changes the enzyme's shape or function, preventing it from catalyzing the reaction effectively. On the left side of the slide, the active site can bind to the substrates S1 and S2 at its active site, allowing the reaction to proceed. The inhibitor, I, binds to a different site. We call that as allosteric site, not the active site. Once the inhibitor binds, the enzyme changes the shape and becomes inactive, preventing the substrates from binding and stopping the reaction. The key point here is that non-competitive inhibition reduces enzyme activity regardless of how much substrate is present, because it does not directly compete for the active site, but instead it alters the enzyme's overall structure. We have come to the last concept of this topic on chemical reactions and enzymes. What are allosteric modulators? These are molecules that bind to an enzyme at a site away from the active site. By binding elsewhere, they alter the shape of the active site, which can either increase or decrease the enzyme's ability to bind to its substrate. Covalent modulators are modulators that attach covalently, forming a stable chemical bond to the enzyme at a site away from the active site. The binding causes a change in the enzyme shape, which alters the function of an enzyme. The phosphate groups are a common example of covalent modulators in the human body, often involved in the process like signal transduction and enzyme regulation. On the left side, the enzyme has its own or has its normal active sites available for substrate binding. On the right side, after a phosphate group P binds to the enzyme, the shape of the active site changes, which can impact how effectively the enzyme functions. The key point to this one is that allosteric modulators regulate enzyme activity by modifying the enzyme structure, allowing fine control over metabolic pathways. This ends the lesson on chemical reactions and enzymes.